Not all manipulation appears in obvious ways, such as shouting, threats, or direct orders. Most of the time, it disguises itself as care, concern, or simple curiosity. Toxic people rarely state clearly what they want. They prefer to ask questions, because questions confuse, create guilt, and put the other person on the defensive. When you fail to recognize this pattern, you end up being emotionally led without understanding how you got there. Recognizing these questions is the first step toward taking back control of your own decisions and relationships. One of the most common questions is, why are you always so sensitive? It usually comes up when you express pain, discomfort, or frustration. The intention is not to understand how you feel, but to invalidate your emotions. Little by little, you begin to believe that feeling is an exaggeration, that reacting is wrong, and that the problem is always you. To avoid conflict, you start to stay silent, swallow your discomfort, and accept situations that hurt you, just to avoid being seen as dramatic. Another frequently used question is, don't you trust me? It usually appears when you question something that feels off or try to set boundaries. Instead of explaining or clarifying, the person turns your doubt into an accusation. Protecting yourself starts to look like betrayal. This creates guilt and confusion, making you doubt your own judgment and ignore clear warning signs, just to keep the relationship going. There is also the question, after everything I've done for you. This is where emotional blackmail comes in. Everything the person has done, even what was basic or expected, is used as a bargaining chip. The hidden message is that you are in constant debt. When you believe this, you begin to tolerate behaviors you would never accept, simply to avoid seeming ungrateful or cold. Control happens when you start to feel responsible for the other person's happiness. Another extremely toxic question is, don't you think you're overreacting? It directly attacks your perception of reality. Gradually, you begin to question your feelings, your memory, and your ability to interpret situations. This process weakens your self-confidence and creates emotional dependence, because you start to rely on the other person's validation to know whether what you feel is legitimate or acceptable. Finally, there is the question, if you really loved me, you would do this for me. This phrase turns love into an obligation. It is not a request. It is emotional pressure disguised as affection. Your own desires are always pushed into the background. You begin to act out of fear of disappointing, not out of conscious choice. Over time, you lose autonomy, identity, and boundaries, all in the name of proving love and keeping the relationship alive. The greatest danger of these questions is that, when taken individually, they seem normal. Almost everyone has heard something similar at some point in life. But when they are repeated, they form a pattern, and patterns reveal intentions. Recognizing this does not mean becoming cold or overly suspicious, but developing emotional awareness and learning how to protect yourself. The more clarity you have about these dynamics, the less space there is for someone to control your emotions, decisions, and boundaries. Understanding this mechanism changes the way you position yourself in the world. You begin to listen to yourself more, respect your inner limits, and notice when a conversation stops being healthy. Toxic people feed on doubt, fear, and guilt, but they lose power when they encounter someone who is aware. The more you recognize these questions, the less power they have over you. This does not mean attacking, confronting, or arguing all the time, but clearly choosing where you stay and where you walk away from. Awareness is emotional freedom, and freedom begins when you realize you don't need to explain yourself in order to protect yourself. This kind of emotional maturity does not appear overnight. It grows from observation, experience, and often from pain. Toxic relationships teach difficult but important lessons. By recognizing these questions, you stop reacting automatically and begin to respond with awareness. You understand that love does not require constant sacrifice, that respect does not create guilt, and that healthy connections do not need manipulation to exist. When you learn this, your posture changes. Your voice becomes firmer, your decisions clearer, and your relationships more balanced. People who try to control others quickly realize when they no longer have emotional access, and when control ends, peace begins. This is self-care, not selfishness. It is protection. Learning to identify manipulation is an ongoing process that strengthens your self-esteem, expands your emotional perception, and reduces unnecessary conflict. The more aware you become, the less vulnerable you are to subtle, psychological games and control-based relationships. This clarity brings lightness, security, and the certainty that you can choose healthier, truer, and more respectful relationships without fear or guilt. Always value yourself, always.